Well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to Whitmix's webinar, Making Clear Aligners Using the 3Shape Ortho System Module. Today, that'll be presented by Brandon Smith. My name is Bernie Jaroslaw. I'm the Marketing Manager for Whitmix, and I will be facilitating today's webinar. I'd like to begin with a few housekeeping items. First, in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see a questions box. Just feel free to type in any questions you might have throughout the presentation, and then Brandon will be answering those at the end of the webinar. Next, if you are a CDT, this webinar is approved for 1 hour of CE credit toward your certification. You'll receive an email within 1 to 2 days that will tell you how to obtain that credit. And lastly, the webinar is being recorded, and within about 48 hours or so, it will be up on the Whitmix website in the webinar section. So this morning I have the pleasure of introducing Brandon Smith. Brandon is a CDT and technical support representative at Whitmix, where he provides training and technical digital support for the company's CAD/CAM customers. Brandon is certified in implants. He started working in a dental laboratory in 2003 as a CAD/CAM technician, then moved to North Carolina and started at a lab that was just starting its digital journey. In the 3 years he worked there, he grew the CAD/CAM department from 1 scanner and 1 designer with no mills or printers into a fully efficient department with 2 mills, 1 3D printer, 3 designers, scanners, and 5 employees. Today, Brandon will be speaking on making clear aligners in our 3Shape Ortho System Module. This is without a doubt one of the fastest growing areas in CAD/CAM dental technology. Brandon's going to be doing a live demonstration of the workflow, model preparation, tooth movements, model stages. All labs, including ortho labs, can now provide in-house aligners to their accounts. So that's about all I've got, Brandon. So if you're ready, let's talk about making clear aligners.
Okay, thank you, Bernie. I'm going to start off by kind of explaining the process a little bit. One of the main issues with doing virtual aligners is that there's no real good way to manufacture the aligner itself. So you still kind of have to use the suck down method to do these, but what this software is going to help you do is create the models to create the suck downs on. So I'm going to go ahead and just start through the workflow. The first thing that you'll want to do is, let me share my screen here. So this is the main interface here for the Ortho System software. This is the 2017 version, so it's the newest, most up-to-date version of the software. So what I'm going to start off by doing is coming up here to the top left and creating a new patient. Now, when you create the patient, it's similar to the regular 3Shape software where you don't have to fill in all of the information. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fill in the patient ID. So this will be, I'll just name this webinar, and then I'll click create. So as you can see over here on the left, it creates a patient for us, but now we have to create an actual case. So what we're going to do is we'll right click and go to new model set. In the new model set here over on the left, it allows us to tell it if we're going to do upper and lower arches or both. And then we need to name the model set itself. So we're going to do aligners on this case. Again, here you can fill out as much information as you want, but you don't have to. The only thing it needs is the model set ID. So we'll click create here. And now the interface will open. So typically with this kind of a case, we'll either scan in models or we'll import in models. So in this particular case, I'm going to go ahead and just import in models. So under maxillary model here, I'll click browse. And mine defaulted to where I've got the model stored. So I'm going to go ahead and hit upper here. And then I'll go ahead and do the lower as well. And then you also have the ability in this software to import CT scans. So I do have a CT scan for this, so we'll go ahead and browse. This screen pops up here. You'll need to navigate to where the CT scans are stored. as far as this goes, typically CT scans are broken up into a series of multiple scans. So all you have to do here is select the top one and then come down here to the bottom right and select next. So this kind of blends all the CT scans together, and then we can actually scroll through certain views. And what we're going to do here is we're going to enable the cropping option, which is over here on the right. What this will allow us to do is cut out the extra data that we don't need. So we'll start over here on the top left with this red slider. So you can see the very far right is moving. So what we'll want to do is kind of just crop this in with these yellow squares. So what this will do is when it actually generates these models for us, it won't have all this extra data like the spine and the top of the skull and things like that that we don't need. So we'll just go through all of these. If you go to the green sliders, so now we're moving the middle screen here, the front view. So I'll go ahead and crop this in as well. And we just want to make sure that we capture all the information we need, like I said. So we'll go ahead and check all these sliders. All right, so it looks like we're good here. One thing you'll notice down here on the graphics card, you'll see the max 3D texture dimension and the memory available. We want to make sure that those values appear in green. And same thing over here on the right under options where it says memory required. As long as all those fields appear green, then this will be a scan that it can generate into a 3D model for us. So what we'll do is we'll click next. And then here's our 3D model from the CT scan. So this will be helpful because with these, we can actually see where the roots are. So we can define the long axis of the teeth and actually define out the roots to give us more accurate tooth movements. So we'll go ahead and click finish here. And now we've got all of our scans in here. So we'll click load. And now it populates the screen with our two models here, and there's sliders up at the top right where we can actually turn on and off any scans that we've got imported in. So before we do anything else here, what we're going to need to do is make these models watertight. So what that will do is it'll prepare the models for 3D printing so that we can actually print all these models and make our suck downs. So what we'll need to do is we'll come up here to the input options box and left click on patient browser. So our patient list comes back up. So we'll click on our patient ID and we'll click on aligners. Now you'll see here that the status is unprepared. We need to make sure that that is prepared. So we'll right click on it and we will go to prepare model set. So it'll have us define a few things. We're going to define the occlusal plane and the sagittal plane in this area. So you can see up here at the top left where it says set up occlusal plane, please set landmark on number 3. So what it wants is the buccal cusp tip, the mesial buccal cusp tip. So I'll click there. Now it says set landmark 8, 9. It really doesn't matter if you set it on 8 or 9, but it wants that mesial corner. And then it wants you to place one on number 14 in the same place where you place number 30. So now that we've got the occlusal plane defined, we also need to define the sagittal plane. So we'll just take and draw a line straight through the midline, try to make it as straight as possible, and we'll release. So now we have a sagittal plane too. These can be adjusted a little bit if you want to. There is no real need to. We just want to make sure that the sagittal plane goes straight through the arch. So once we're okay here, we'll click next. And now we're going to cut off the extra material that we don't need on the upper arch. So you can do this by placing dots. And then you can also do a fast edit spline, which will let you just trace it out. I'll show that on the next arch. Once you've connected to the first dot, you can adjust these points around if you'd like. And then we'll just hit next. And now we'll go to the lower arch. So I said here that you could do the fast edit, which it's actually not letting me do at the moment. So we'll just go ahead and do the spline with the points. And again, the whole goal here is to cut off the extra information. And since these arches will be 3D printed, obviously the smaller you make the arches, the more you'll be able to fit on your build platform. So that's why I'm cutting both of these into horseshoes. You don't really need the palette on the upper to do aligners. So now it's going to have us put bases on these models. Now the whole key to this is to make sure that you don't come outside these boxes with the splines that we've created. And you also need to make sure that the lower spline stays in the green box and the upper spline stays in the blue box. So you can do quite a few different ways to position these. If you left click and hold on either one of the boxes, it moves it around. You can also rotate the box, and you can also resize the boxes by grabbing the green dots. So we'll just go ahead and attempt to make this base as small as possible while still including all of our information. And if we can't quite make it as small as we want to, we can fix that later on in the design, which I'll show how to do that. Then once you're okay with that, you'll hit next. Now this error will come up if there's an issue where the spline's penetrating through the boxes. So you'll just need to go back through and double check, which I can see a few little areas. There we go. So now these are the bases that it puts on the models. There's a lot of extra material here, so in order to trim that, we'll go ahead and click next here, and it'll give us a sculpt area. So to trim these down, you'll want to look at them from the top and go to this rightmost icon here that says spline cut. We'll click there. So under spline type, you have two different options here. One is more of a jagged line, the other is a curved line. I prefer the curved line because what it does is as you're marking your points, it will curve the line around the arch instead of just connecting the points directly. And you always want to make sure that you maintain the same view when you do this, otherwise the angle that it cuts will be kind of all over the place. So now you can see we've cut down our models quite a bit. So once we hit the green play button, it saves that. So these are small enough. So we'll go ahead and come up here to the top left and hit next. And it takes us to the lower arch. And we'll do the same thing here. And one thing you'll want to look for on this before you hit the play button is to just make sure that you haven't intersected any of the teeth with this green plane, because it will cut those areas off. So in order to fix that, we've got a little tissue area here, which isn't a big deal, but just to show, if you just grab these dots and move them a little bit, it'll change the angle at which the green plane goes. So now we can see that it's not cutting off that area. So we'll go ahead and hit the play button here, and that cuts it off. So now we've got a fairly small model that we can 3D print pretty accurately. So we'll go up to the top left and click Next. And now we're actually done preparing the models. So these models are ready to be prepared for tooth movement. So we'll come up here and click Done. And now in order to go back into the case, we'll just need to double click on aligners here. And that'll bring back up our Ortho Analyzer software. So the first thing we're going to want to do here is actually align these models to the CT scan. So you can see over here on the left where it says model alignment, the very first icon is aligned with CT scan. So we'll click there. Now over here on the left, you can see it's wanting us to put points to align. So this is similar to scanning models in dental systems. So we'll just pick 3 points. And now we'll go to the lower and we'll pick 3 points as well. And now up here at the top right, we're going to turn on our CT scan and we're going to place the same points. Now, when you do this, you want to make sure that you do the same model. So we're going to do the upper model first, and then we'll come back and do the lower model. And then we'll come up to the top left and click Align. And you can see it lined up the models to the CT scan. So once we're done here, we'll come up to the top left and click Done. And now we need to go and prepare the models for tooth movement. So down here where it says Preparation, we can actually skip over these first 2 steps here because we did that when we prepared the models. So we'll go straight into segmentation of the maxillary model. So I'm only going to do the front 6 on the upper, so I'll just prepare this model for this. So you can see here on the left we have the overview chart with all the teeth in it. So the first thing I want to do is tell it that we're missing the wisdom teeth. So if I click on that tooth, so I'll click on number 1 here, and then I'll click the checkbox that says missing, and you'll see that it removes it from the chart. So we'll need to do this first on both of these. And now we'll need to come up to this chart and click on the first tooth that we're going to move. So I'm going to start at number 6. And so what we're going to do here is place a distal and mesial point. So the distal point goes on the distal, mesial, and then we'll go around the arch. So as you can see, the chart will continue to work its way around until I get to the last tooth that I want to do. Now it will let you continue to go forward with more teeth, but you just have to stop at the tooth that you're going to end with. And now we'll go over to the next icon, which is tooth axis. So this is basically telling it the long axis of the tooth. So we just need to make sure that it aligns with the long axis. So we'll check it from a few different views, and we're just going to change the angulation if we need to. And then we'll just work our way around. And you can move teeth by just clicking the teeth in the chart on the left. Once we're done here, now we'll move back to tooth number 6, and we will go to point groups. So this is going to give us all of the landmarks on the tooth. So as you can see down here at the bottom left, we have a little box that has cusp tip, mesial incisal point, disto incisal point. So we're going to need to mark these landmarks. So we'll just come in here and left click and place dots. So here's the cusp tip. Now we need the mesial incisal point and the distal incisal point. After we finish marking the last point on that tooth, it moves us automatically to the next tooth. So we'll just continue through and mark our landmarks. Now once we're done there, we'll go ahead and come up to the top left and click Next. And now it's going to define the cuts for the teeth. So this is similar to doing these on stone models where we have to segment out each tooth individually to make the movements. So what we want to do is just check these splines and make sure that they are in the outline of the tooth, right where the tooth structure meets the gingival. So I'm going to go around and just kind of fine tune these and make sure they're in the right areas. In order to edit a spline, you have to make sure that you click the tooth in the chart first. So I'll just work my way back around again. Okay, once I'm done here, then I'll go ahead and left click Next. So now it's going to allow me to sculpt the teeth. The reason that you'll want to do this is, as you'll notice, where it's cut out the teeth, it's left this sharp edge. So if you rotate any of these teeth, this sharp edge is going to show up on your model. So I'm just going to go around and kind of soften these edges just a little bit. Now you don't want to go overboard because you can change the shape of the tooth by doing this, but it's very minimal in this area. And that there is plenty of smoothing, so we'll just go through and kind of do this on each tooth. Okay, that's all we really need to do here. So now we'll go ahead and left click next. And now this area here is for the rotation center of the tooth. So what we need to do is turn the CT scan back on. What this is going to do is it's going to allow us to see these root tips. So what we want to try and do is align these root tips up with these red lines. And then we also want to bring the top of the red line down so that we can actually get a better pivot point. So I'm going to fade some of my models here so I can see the CT scan. So we can see that the root is actually back here. And we'll bring our pivot point down. I like to put mine just below the tissue. About that distance is good. It's going to use this pivot point to actually rotate and move the teeth. So if we make them too high, then you'll have really large pivots and it won't move as easily as it needs to. So we're just going to go through and do this on all 6 of these teeth. So like I said, we'll just rotate these back, make sure that they kind of follow the direction that the roots are going. And this is very similar to what we did earlier, but that earlier was for the long axis of the tooth. It didn't take into consideration the roots. This is just for the roots. All right, once we're done here, then we'll come up here to the top left and left click done. So now we've prepared our model for tooth movement. So I'll go ahead and turn off the CT scan. Now to do tooth movement for clear aligners, we'll want to go down here to treatment and we'll left click on virtual setup. So now it gives us our 6 teeth here and we can actually go through and make tooth adjustments now. So in order to start the process, we'll double click on the tooth we want to start with. So I'm going to start here with this central. So it's similar to dental system where you can actually rotate the teeth. But in this case, the rotation was set by some of the previous steps. So it rotates on kind of a wider arc than what we're used to. As you can see here, that's based on the pivot point that we set in the root step. So I'm just going to go through here and kind of make some quick adjustments, but you have the ability to rotate, change positions. You can actually left click and drag and move teeth around. So we'll go through here, we'll do some really quick adjustments, and then I will show you how to generate the outputs. And we'll look at the animation, and you can actually, it's kind of neat, you can show your patients where they're starting at and where the ending position will be. Now there is a way in here that you can detect collisions. So if I come over here to where it says movements and I left click and check this box, perform collision detection, you can actually see that it'll give us these red circles. It'll do it in the opposing as well. And this will just kind of show when we're colliding through other teeth. And then you can also turn on band size calculation. So this will actually tell you the band circumference that you'll need. So this is handy if you're going to do a full restoration here with braces. You can actually do band calculations on certain teeth. So I'm just going to go here and try and finish this up real quick. Try and do a few major movements, that way we can show quite a bit when we do the animation. So, and as you can see, as I've rotated some of these teeth, had I not gone through and sculpted on them, we would see some jagged edges on the interproximal areas, and then those would actually show up in the prints, which would then affect the quality of the aligners. So that's one reason why we want to go through and just kind of smooth out those edges a little bit. One other nice thing about this software too is that you can intrude teeth, so you can do some crown lengthening if you want with these teeth. So I'm going to go ahead and leave it here, and then we're going to go ahead and calculate out the animation. So in order to do that, up here at the top left, you can see this little green play button that says animate substeps. So I'll click that, and then as you can see, the teeth will move. So what it'll do is it will save this animation as a video, and you can actually replay that as many times as you want. It's kind of handy for showing the patient, you know, what needs to be done to their teeth in order to fix things. And then anytime you make additional changes, you'll want to make sure that you redo that animation so that it's accurate. It doesn't update real time. One other thing that you can do too is over here where it says edit flexible tissue areas. One thing that the software does is it actually moves the tissue with the teeth. So in order to change where the flexible areas are, obviously you don't want it on the tooth. You just come in here and you can redraw it. You don't want the base included either, so you can come back up here and redraw it. So now anything that appears inside the spline line will be what moves with the teeth. Anything outside that will not move. So now if we go back to our teeth movements, one thing you'll notice over here is that when I go ahead and move this tooth a little bit, it doesn't move the contact anymore. So now once I'm done moving the teeth around, I can come up here and go ahead and redo the animation. You can see here that it's kind of rotating the teeth inward a little bit. And then the other thing that you'll want to do is click on a tooth. Over here in this box on the right, you can see at the very bottom where it says Tooth Movements Overview. You can left click on that. So you can see over here all of the different changes that were made to each tooth. So from what I understand as a rule of thumb with the software is whatever the highest number is, you double it, and that's how many aligners you'll need. So our highest number in here, except for the tooth long axis angle, we don't take that into consideration, is 10. So we'll need to double that, so we'll do 20 aligners on this case. So in order to tell it to do 20 models, what you have to do is come up here right next to the Animate Substeps button. There's a Subdivide step. So if you click that, it'll give you sub setups count. So you enter in whatever number you want. So we'll do 20 in this case and hit OK. Now it gives us all of these substeps. So these are actually going to be models that it's going to generate out with. the original original with attachments is the very first step, and then the last step is number 19 here. So now that we've done that, in order to actually create the outputs for the models, what we'll need to do is come up here to the top left and click Export Setups. So I'll left click there. And now we'll come into the Export Virtual Setup As box. Oops. Here. There we go. So this is what you want to see. Now, if you haven't made any changes to one of the models, you can actually just uncheck all these extras. So since we didn't do the lowers, I'll come through here and uncheck the lower models and all the sub-steps. That way it only gives us one lower model, and then it gives us all of the upper models. So now once we've done that, we'll come down here to the bottom where it says export and click export. Now this step here can take a few minutes because it's generating quite a few models. So this, you'll just need to watch the bottom left. Once it gets to 100%, then you'll have your models, and then I'll actually show you where to find those files so that you can send them to the printer. The nice thing about this is that this model, since we prepared it before we went into this step, it's actually ready to be printed. So there's no model builder step after this. It's just straight to the printer software. So as soon as these start or finish generating, we'll be able to find those files, and then that would pretty much conclude the clear aligners portion of this. Once the models are printed, then you'll just take them into the vacuum form machine that you use and do suck downs, trim the suck downs, and then they're ready to go. So it really does cut out quite a bit of work as far as doing tooth movements, especially when you had to do it by hand, or you had to send it to a company like Invisalign and wait for the models to come back with all the aligners. This really speeds things up for you. So we're at 98% now. So now I'll show you where to find your model. So if you just click down on your File Explorer, you'll just want to go to your C drive. You'll want to go into the Program Data folder, 3Shape, and then Ortho Data. And now you're going to find your patient name. So ours was this webinar. And then you'll go into the model set that you created. So we created aligners on this. So this is all of the information on your aligners and your case. So what we'll do is we'll go into models. And now you can see in all these folders here, it's got all the different sub-steps. So each one of these folders has models with slight movements. So this is where you'll go to find your models to print. So that pretty much concludes how to do the aligners. So one thing you'll notice, I'll pull up our Composer software here. This is the print software that we use, and we'll just go ahead and create a new case, set our printer, set our material, and hit OK. And now if I go into that same folder and select our files, so we'll go to our C drive, Program Data, 3Shape, Data. So if we pull, we'll say our last model here, you can see there's one of our aligner models. So you'll be able to print all those by just going into those folders. You can see this one does have the completion of our tooth movement here that I did. So other than that, if there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer them for you.
Brandon, great job. Thank you. Very informative. There are a couple questions, a few questions I'll let you know. First is what version of Ortho Analyzer is?
This is the newest version. I think it's 17.2 or 3. Let me look. Let's just do this. This is 1.7.1.3.
1.7.1.3.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next question. That seems like a lot of aligners. Can you choose how many to make, or does the software dictate the amount?
You can certainly choose how many you want to make. When I went into the sub-step area and entered in that value into the box, that's actually how many aligners you're going to do. So if you want to do less than that, you're more than welcome to. If you're just doing simple tooth movements, you can do, you know, as many aligners as you want. There's nothing really that dictates that. I just kind of used that rule of thumb that I was trained on when I went through the 3Shape training for it. So it's completely up to you how many aligners you want to do. Or if your doctor dictates how many aligners you want to do, I would just go by that.
Thank you. Don't you have to be 510K cleared to create the aligners?
That is a good question, and I'm not 100% sure on that. I think that the material that you use has to be 510K cleared. I don't believe that you actually have to, but I would not hold me to that because I'm not 100% sure.
Okay. The next question is, what's the best way to share this with your doctor?
So if I actually go into the file folder where this is saved, you can actually find that video that it made. So, videos. So these are the videos that it makes. So you can actually pull these up. These are supposed to be videos, but you can actually show them what you've done as far as alignment. There's also, when you go back into the case, there are some reports that you can generate as far as questionnaires, analysis reports, so you can actually send this to your doctor. Or I know a lot of ortho labs that actually get the doctor on TeamViewer with them and go over the case as they're working on it to kind of go over some challenges and things. So you're more than welcome to do that as well.
Okay, and here's another one. How will you know what step the model is in once you put it on the build plate?
So when you go into the area where the models are saved, it actually tells you the sub-steps in the folders, and I believe the file names of the cases have the sub-step, but let me just double check here. They don't. So you just kind of have to keep track of which ones you've imported in, it looks like. There's no real identification on each one. But you could, I think, if you have the appliance designer, you can actually put ID tags on models. So you could take them into that and then pop ID tags on them that way. And that's a pretty simple process to do.
if you want to go through the, if you want the tag, do you go through Model Builder?
Well, it's not quite Model Builder. It's actually Appliance Designer, which is another part of, let's see, I believe it's the export model option. It doesn't matter what machine you or material you pick, you just hit create. And you'll go through all the questions. There is an option in here so you can actually add an ID tag on right away. So you can, maybe there's a way you can rename these. Yeah, so in the ID text, you just tell it, you know, if you want to do step 1, and then you'll do the integrated, hit preview. Yeah, there it is. So then you can rotate it. It works a little differently than Model Builder, but it does work. You can tell it, you know, if you want it into the model, you can tell it a negative value here, and then that will drop it through the model a little bit, and then positive values will, oops, that might be too much. There we go. So negative values will push it into the model, positive values will raise it off of the model, similar to that, and then you just kind of go through and process through each model. Now this can be kind of a pain. There are other workarounds to doing this that are a little simpler. If you're on Windows 10, there's a piece of software called 3D Builder where you can pull in STLs and you can edit them. One of the nice features about it is it's really easy to put text on things, so you can actually use that if you want. If you do have questions about how to use that software, if you get into this, I can do a quick run through for you on TeamViewer, but it's really simple to use. It's a little bit easier than using this setup.
All right, thank you. And one last question, which I think everybody wants to know, and that is, what's the going cost for doing aligners?
Oh, there's a huge range on that. Some labs charge per aligner. Other labs charge for a package. So it's really however you want to do it. I mean, I've seen some charge per aligner like $100. I've seen more. So it really depends on how much you want to do, how you want to structure it. I will say this, one good thing about charging per aligner is the doctor doesn't get hit with a huge upfront cost, and let's say the patient gets 3 aligners in and doesn't wear one of them, all that alignment is lost. So if you haven't given them all, let's say there were 6 aligners, they wore 3 and then didn't wear the 4th one or didn't wear the 3rd one, those last 3 or 4 aligners, you're not out those. So the doctor can, you know, rescan the patient, send you the new models, and then you can redesign those last couple aligners without already having done all that modeling and printing of those models and then doing all the suck downs. So that would be the way that I would structure it, but you can do full packages too. One thing about doing the full package is it kind of locks the patient and the doctor in all at one time. So it kind of gives the patient more incentive to actually wear the aligners. But as far as cost goes, I mean, you can charge, I've seen some labs charge $1,500 for a full package, which is like 12 aligners. I've seen them charge anywhere from $100 to $300 per aligner. So it really depends on how much you want to charge.
All right, thank you. And there is another, well, two more questions. One is, it's not a 3Shape question, but what thickness of aligner do you like to use?
I would say somewhere in the range of a 0.5 millimeter to no thicker than a millimeter, which is part of the reason that you can't 3D print aligners, because the material, once you get that thin, you get a lot of failures. The material becomes too flexible. So that's part of the reason that you're going to want to use a vacuum form machine to do these. But you can go even thinner than that too. But you just have to keep in mind that you have to use a nice rigid material, because the thinner you go, the more flexible it becomes, and the less likely it'll actually move the teeth.
Yeah, I think this the other question that popped up, I think you just answered, and that is, can you use models with splint designer to make an STL of an aligner rather than a suck down?
Yes, but in order to be able to manufacture those, they have to be, I want to say most ortho appliances that are 3D printed need to be somewhere in the range of like 1.5 millimeters to 2 millimeters thick to accurately print, and that's way too thick for a clear aligner.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that is the end of the questions, and we're nearly the end of the webinar. I just want to remind everyone that if you are a CDT, you will receive an email within 1 to 2 days that'll tell you exactly how you obtain your credit. I will tell you this, it does entail a little test, not too difficult, but if you were paying attention, I'm sure that won't be an issue. And lastly, this webinar was recorded, and within about 48 hours or so, it's going to be up on the WhipMix website in our webinar section of our resource area. So go to whipmix.com and go to resources, and then you'll see the webinar section. And then it'll also be up on our WhipMix YouTube channel shortly thereafter. Well, thanks, everyone. Appreciate you joining us today. Brandon, thanks for a great job, and hope to see you all at another webinar very soon. Take care then.